Yes, sir. ALX official podcast. Here with the guy in the corner, Glen. Glen, how do you? What's your last name? I don't even know your last name.
Gies, Gies.
Glen Gies.
Yeah.
Glen Gies, also known as the guy in the corner. People refer to you as that ever?
Somewhat.
I referred to you as that a couple of times. I was like that guy in the corner. Yeah, under the E5 bridge at the University of Waterloo, handing out poems.
And tracks.
Yeah.
Or little pamphlets, yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, for sure.
Mhm.
So I'm super grateful for that you're on this podcast with me today. It's something
It's good to be here.
Yeah, man. We've developed a really, really good relationship over the past couple years.
I think you were in second year, maybe?
Yeah, I think it was early second year.
Early.
Second year.
Yeah.
I'm in fourth year.
Yep.
Just for reference.
Mhm.
So a couple of years. We've been getting to know each other and just building our relationship, and I've been super, super grateful for it, man. It's it's one of those where like I was like if I were to have like just like one of those like off days, I knew you'd be, on the corner for me just to kind of come by and just kind of engage in a good different conversation with someone for a sec and just get my thoughts out, get my just a high level conversation. That's how I always kind of looked at it. So I always kind of went to that corner and went to you for that. So it's been crazy how we've developed the relationship from that point. So I just want to start off by saying thank you. Thank you.
Well, I think it's been kind of I would call it a dynamic sort of connecting,
Yeah.
And pretty dynamic. Almost any time we connect, we do get those we meet out there, and it's kind of spontaneous.
Yeah.
And yet we usually have some parallel or some really interconnected things to share, and I think that's what makes relating such an interesting or dynamic, wonderful experience when you really can connect in a spontaneous way.
Mm-hmm.
Not a lot of students I can do with that with on a regular basis
Mm-hmm.
when I see them out there. Maybe once in a while it happens, but not as consistently as maybe what it has with you, Ben.
Yeah. It has been pretty consistent.
I would say so.
Yeah.
And then during that time, you've been going through a lot of changes in your own life, and
Yeah.
you're exploring. You've been involved, you're pursuing different things and different aspects of your life, and I mean, I think that's what relationships should be about. That we can connect on that basis.
Yeah. Really share the more personal side of you
Precisely.
to someone, and them reciprocate that back to you, and kind of bond over that communication, right?
I think that's what it is about. It's about bonding,
Mm-hmm.
or just being able to relate at that deeper human level. And I mean, it doesn't always happen. In fact, maybe it's kind of infrequent, and yet it happens enough for me to kind of keep me pursuing the things that I'm doing out there.
For sure. Yeah, that was honestly one of the questions to ask that I really wanted to ask you, is just for the students that haven't came up and talked to you, and it was really the first thing I ever said to you, and it's a little goofy, but I was like, man, what are you doing on this corner? Like, what are you up to? Like, what's your mission? What's your goal with being out there every single day, rain or shine, right?
Well, usually it's for at least 4 or sometimes 5 days a week.
Yeah.
Usually in the afternoon, sometimes a little bit earlier, but usually in the afternoon.
Yeah.
And I think that's a kind of it even came up today with another student that is in his 4A term, and I've never met him before, and he had the same thing. What are you doing out here?
Yeah,
So it does
yeah.
come up pretty regularly, that
Yeah.
question.
Yeah.
So it was one student, he'd been there 10 years at the University of Waterloo, 10 years before he finally said, hey, what are you doing out here?
Before he finally came up to
Yeah,
you, eh?
he did his bachelor's, his master's, and he was finishing up his PhD, and he finally said, what are you doing out here?
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting, because for me, it was just kind of like, I passed you so many times. I was walking by you so many times and just kind of looking at you, interacting with someone, or even not interacting with someone, and you're just kind of standing there just, but you're still like enjoying yourself. And I think that's one thing that we've connected over with, and one thing you're really good at is just like that presence, that feeling of the being present, being
Mm-hmm.
in the moment, right?
Well, I mean, there's
We were
lots of,
talking about that yesterday too.
we were.
Yeah.
There's lots of times when it gets, when I'm not maybe interacting for extended periods of the afternoon or that it gets, it feels like there's a deadness setting in, to say the least, you know, it gets kind of, but I mean, there are things that I'm taking in, like even yesterday, there were just some really neat things happening in the sky and you know, with the birds on the rocks across from me, and just different things that really kind of keep my mind active, because sometimes it can get sort of dull and feeling like feeling like nothing much is happening, because nothing much is happening until someone really does come along.
Yeah.
I guess that's how it is in life. I mean, look, we need our quiet time. We need our time, as you were sharing even before. We need our time to reflect on our lives.
Yeah.
And maybe hear something that we haven't been hearing before. So that doesn't always happen. Just necessarily in interactions, but it happen. We need those quiet times too, for sure. So I get lots of time out there to reflect and jot things down.
I see.
Mm-hmm.
I see. You get That's interesting. That's interesting. You notice things like you have like you notice unique things in like the sky, or like what was that one. I didn't even look it up on Google. You mentioned it to me yesterday. It was like the one kind of certain array that kind of pops up in the sky every so often.
There was like an arc.
Yeah.
The sun was getting low. It was kind of partially behind some clouds, and then there was this arc across, like a rainbow, the shape of a rainbow.
Yeah.
It had some color in it, but not as unique, not as bright and vibrant as a rainbow, not at all. And I watched it for some time. I showed it to a few people. It's called. There's two things. If the sun had been up higher, it would be called a sun halo. It would have been totally around the sun, but the sun was low then, so there's only this arc, and they call them sundogs.
Sundog.
People should look those sundogs up on the internet.
Google sundog.
Sundogs. I'll tell you, there's a vast array of them.
Yeah.
And this was just one. And so it's the sun going through ice crystals.
Yeah.
The sunlight going through ice crystals. If it was through rain, on the other, if the clouds and rain had been in the east and the sun was going down in the west, it would have shown up as a rainbow on the other side. But this is like what they call sundog. Look them up. They're really something to see.
Yeah, I need to.
Yeah,
I need to.
One of the wonders of nature, I think. There's many wonders of nature.
Yeah. So I'm down to take the conversation wherever you want to take it. You have some stuff written down. You've been reflecting today. So,
I have been.
So like whatever you might want to bring up.
Well, you know, Alex, you said something interesting to me before that kind of even got me thinking, and that is when you were talking about your own family.
Yeah.
And their willingness to let you kind of do what you do, and explore things, and not be pushing you in one direction or another. Just allowing you to kind of find life, you know, for yourself, right?
Yeah.
And you've gone through some things that maybe they would have wondered about. Who knows?
Yeah, for sure they have.
But they have not tried to limit you or hold you back or tell you this is the wrong thing. So it's kind of, to me, in what you've described of your family, it sounds like a climate of love. You know, a climate of love for the most part, right?
Yeah.
You maybe wouldn't have seen that when you were younger. Mm-hmm. But as you get a bit older, we see those things, you know? Mm-hmm. And, so, I mean, when we have that kind of an experience, it really, it enables us to, when love is kind of the enabling thing in life, and when you recognize it, and you value it, and you really appreciate it, and it allows you to really, live a life that you're not feeling pressured or forced. Mm-hmm. And so that at that level, it's such a vital thing. And for me, you know, I had an experience 37 years ago that I guess I would call, from a Christian point of view, my conversion experience.
Right.
And it was an awakening.
Yeah. Yeah. And you talk a lot about awakenings.
And it really was a coming to an awareness of myself and my predicament in life. And at that point, my marriage was breaking up. And I was kind of thinking, well, I'm pretty happy about that. I'm going to go on with this life, and I'll leave this behind me. And then I got a real awakening, a rude one, you might say, or a painful one, very painful, that it wasn't my partner my partner's problem. It was my problem and my unwillingness to value her. That's part of what that whole experience that you're talking about. Your parents value you enough to let you explore your own life.
Yeah.
So valuing, it doesn't mean we can never warn somebody, we should never warn someone about some direction they're taking. I'm not saying that love can operate on that level too, right? A warning, hey, this is not good stuff you're doing or whatever,
Yeah.
And that's part of love too, but it's when you're really feeling accepted and valued that it really makes life a lot better than when you than people who come from a background where they've really never known that. Or have had a pretty shaky experience of it, if at all.
Yeah.
So my experience by conversion kind of brought me into a new sense of what love was about, and it was that I had really not been loving my partner.
Wow.
I took her for granted.
Yeah. How old were you?
I was heading in my 36th birth. Within a few months would have been 36. So
Interesting.
So that's 37 years ago.
Yeah.
Don't add all that up now. You'll find out my age.
I didn't know your age. I've never known your age.
So I think it was, I knew about it. I knew about it intellectually, but I didn't know it from the point of view, from the experience of the heart, the inner being. And I didn't know that. I only had an intellectual sort of understanding what love was.
Yeah.
And I was a practicing social worker. I was a practicing social worker at that time. So I was working in a psychiatric facility.
Yeah.
I used to see a lot. I used to see men in my situation who came to, when their marriages broke up, they were devastated, and they realized they had really missed it with their companion. They'd really missed it.
They'd missed their shot.
They did.
Yeah.
They missed their shot.
That feeling of regret, right?
Yeah. And there was no turning back. Their partners had moved on. They were not going to go back into something that was going to be unpredictable.
Jeez.
Hey, and I thought about that even earlier today. If you want to ask me why I've continued to try to live out the life I have, from a Christian perspective, obviously, it's because I feel we have one shot at getting it right here. You know what I mean? That's a word I was thinking of, even the one you used. One shot at for me, it has to do with attaining to eternal life, a life that goes beyond this present life.
Yeah.
We have one shot at it, and I want to try to really attain to that and get to that place where it really is my reality. We were talking the other day, I think, about that whole aspect of presence and being in the present. And
we were joking between being present and being present.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
So let's distinguish the two real quick.
Well, presence to me is a feeling of or an experience of something or someone larger than myself. Someone there that's not physically there.
Yeah.
And some writers have written about that too. Some just talk about it as an experience of a real experience of joy or fullness or peace, a sudden experience. But I experience it as presence.
Yeah.
So my understanding of it, it's the reality of God in the universe, not just the universe itself. But we can being present means we're really there in that situation.
Yeah.
We're really taking it in. We're not just kind of distracted by it.
Do you have any tips to be more present? Do you have any things that you've observed, any patterns that you might have kind of come up on that have allowed you to be more present?
Well, I think I have to go back. I'm going to play around with that word again. I think it's presence that reveals it. It reveals it. It opens me to it. It's presence that it reveals it to me, and so it's always a joy when it comes, right?
Yeah.
Well, usually it's a joy. Sometimes it might be a recognition of something I got to do differently, like you were, reflecting on your own life the other night. So it's really an experience of something that really is you're meant to see. You're meant to see it. It's not just a haphazard fluke thing. You're meant to see something.
Mm-hmm.
And
the universe, God, what have you, wants you to see that in that moment.
Well, I definitely see it as a personal God, and and so I think you're really being open to something that you need to see, and so I think it's, I guess over the years I've taken notice of things, so that kind of helps me with that whole reality. Mm-hmm. But I can be kind of in a dull state, not taking much into, just as much as anyone else can. Until something really opens me up again, and kind of it's kind of like another awakening, you might say, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, it might sound like it's just sort of something that's kind of almost sometimes it seems elusive, but I've had enough experiences of it that I don't want to ignore it when it's like when I had that experience with when my marriage was breaking up, and that I could have moved on and just said, oh, well, I've just had a sudden jolt here that really unsettled me and made me realize things, but I'm really thankful I didn't.
Right.
That I took it in. Now, that was a very painful experience.
Yeah.
Some of these other experiences we're talking about are very joyful and full of wonder, and that's something I think a lot of people don't recognize those realities because we're so distracted.
Yeah.
We're so caught up in the everyday things that were either the things that we're pursuing and rushing from here to there, or just distracted in general. And we were just talking before about how distraction takes you away sometimes from those awarenesses, right?
Yeah.
And people often pursue distractions to try to keep going on when there's maybe something really missing in their lives, so they'll just distract themselves to have something anyway.
Yep, they use it as a way out from actually dialing into themselves.
I did that for decades, man.
I
did it for decades, even though I enjoyed life and I enjoyed lots of stuff. It's not that I didn't. Yeah. I even would say I enjoyed my marriage. I can't say that I didn't many times, but I was really missing something more important.
Yeah.
And I mean, I would never, when I was your age in University of Waterloo, by the way, I would never have really thought in terms of, my parents were pretty good. They didn't really try to push me any which way. They kind of let me do my own thing until I missed my second year, and then my dad said, you better get the next one. I failed my second year,
okay.
But it wasn't like a heavy-handed thing. He just said, "Look, if you want to keep living here with us, you gotta make sure you get this next year." And so I switched courses at that point. So, but I would never have thought of my parents. I would have taken for granted my parents' provisions for me. I would have taken it for granted. I knew them as parents. I can't say I really experienced a deep sense of love for them, you know? I just didn't. I just didn't at that age. I missed it because I didn't know yet.
That's one thing we've talked about is telling your loved ones you love them in that moment before that moment's gone.
It really can happen.
You're thinking about it.
That's
right?
precisely it, man. Mm-hmm. Precisely it. My mom and I went on her last night of life. We kept her. She was going through a major decline, and we kept her in our house. But I think that was the first time I really had the kind of conversation with her that I would tell her that I loved her along the way. But I really said, Mom, there's something waiting. She wanted to go somewhere. She was really her health was really failing. I knew it wasn't going to get through that night. And I says, well, where do you want to go? And she says, anywhere. And then I started talking to her. I said, look, Mom, we've got a home awaiting us, but you have to be willing to go through the door that I believe you're meant to go through, Mom. I think it's time you kind of really think about it. Mm-hmm. And she did. She said, I said, don't you think this is the time to really accept that door that's opening for you? And then for me, it was that door of Christ, opening that door or having that door. And it was like a door open for me to have that conversation. And I could have missed it.
Yeah.
It could have been just another night where I would have gone into my own room and missed it altogether. And I had a chance. And that was the night she passed away. Not too many hours after that. And I mean, it was still really sad to see. But she was, she hadn't been eating for several days, which was part of her decline, and I knew that she wasn't going to last. But yeah, so a door open, and I guess that's part of even what we're talking about is a door opening in our lives, right? Mm-hmm. I think you had one of those times last night. A door opened for you, and I see that with a lot of people. A door opens, but sometimes they miss it. They don't see it in the largest. They just think about, oh, well, I got this job.
They're distracted.
Yeah. They don't see it. They might be happy that something happened or recognize it, but they don't recognize that there's something bigger going on because it usually has to do with showing them a way that's more, it's about the way their life, it's being appreciative. Remember we were talking about that student last night. We were talking with that student last night who was talking about giving.
Yeah.
And I think we're given these moments, to be truth. We're given it.
Yeah, we are.
And those moments are really meant to be valued on that basis.
You got to execute on those moments. You got to execute in the moment.
And don't forget it.
Because it's just it's because missing the moment can lead to just an overwhelming sense of regret and anxiety, depending, at scale of how large that moment is.
I had probably 10 years of missing the moment. That I had some earlier moments that could have brought me into my experience of Jesus Christ, and I missed them. I could have seen the man. Or when I say could have,
Man, I've definitely had a few of those
Yeah.
moments that have been so obvious to me that, like, there's a God, there's a universe working with me, So
Yep. Yep.
And
listen,
yeah.
Listen, when I came to university, I threw away any notion of there being a creator God. I threw away any notion that there was any kind of absolute truth. I just thought, I'm going to live my life the way I want to live it.
Yeah.
I'm going to enjoy what I enjoy. But the other thing about, I think, this experience that I've shared the Christian experience. If I'm right in terms of what I experienced, it's not just about an enjoyment, but it's about responsibility to those moments, to that reality behind those moments. It's a responsibility to live our lives on a different level in terms of our own goals and ambitions, if I can put it in those terms, or even in terms of our relationships with other people. I mean, it really is meant to really give us a truer sense of how we're meant to relate in ways that aren't condemning other people or putting them down or judging them.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying I never fall into that, but it gives us an opportunity to not live on that level, And we do that. We write people off very quickly,
we do.
or so in such a superficial way, really,
Yeah.
I had this kind of powerful experience about 2 weeks ago. I was downtown Kitchener. There's a building there at the corner of King and Water Street. It used to be an old Eaton's store. Got a bunch of different offices and that in it. So I was driving by, and there's kind of a doorway there, a fairly wide doorway, and there was a young woman sitting there on a mat, and she had her cart, her grocery cart full of all her belongings in it. So she was living on the streets. But I thought it was someone else for a minute that I also knew had been living on the streets. So I drove around again, and I realized it wasn't this other person I had talked to on quite a few occasions. So I stopped, and she wasn't looking ahead. She was looking to the side, and it was just, amazing profile. She was just really, it was a look of kind of anguish, a look of lostness, probably some significant mental health issues. I'm not saying that isn't what was behind it. But she was just really a look of despair. So I got out. I'm not going to boast about this. I went and gave her some money, just gave her some money. And I was really surprised. She said, thank you. I thought she was, I kind of didn't expect a response necessarily.
Really?
Yeah. I thought she was so inside her head that she wouldn't have even known how to do that.
Yeah.
But it was something about her. It was kind of, look, I think it was kind of like what the world is like in a lot of ways, where people, they're just living a life of despair and anguish and hopelessness, or lamenting things or grieving loss. It could be a lot of things. And that's really what it spoke to me about. And it's part of what I've been thinking about too lately, Alex, is, and we need a deeper sense of compassion, for people who are really living in dire situations, or living on the edge of really dropping off totally. And if we miss that deeper compassion, and I think we're going to be living much more self-centered lives, and self-centered rather than other-centered. So you got to have something that really, not just someone who's going to fulfill you, but someone that it's someone just who is in need of something beyond, that they need. That doesn't mean you can force it on people, but you have to be open to that as well. Mm-hmm. Last week, I had two individuals came along, and both of them were in tears when we were talking. One about the loss of a student in his course who passed away. Another person who was just lamenting a relationship that he's in that's really difficult for him. I think there's a lot of people out there, that are hurting.
Yeah.
Insignificantly.
Yeah. No, I think I think a major contributor to that is the self-centered life.
It is. Yeah.
For sure, because when it's all, and like I admittedly live a very self-centered life.
Hey, listen.
You know?
I'll tell you, it's a daily struggle because it's always there. It's always something we got to deal with.
Yeah.
I don't care how much we've come to say faith in something much bigger or much more that is supposed to be based on real giving love, but I think we have to battle that all the time. Self-centeredness, you know?
Yeah.
Because that's where, it doesn't mean, again, that we shouldn't have some times to ourselves where we're reflecting on things. That's not it.
For sure.
But it's, yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, in those moments where you are reflecting and you're having those moments,
You're vital.
That's when you really get those unlocks,
Recognitions, right?
Yeah, the awakenings.
Well, yeah, if you're really listening carefully, you will.
Yeah, definitely.
So listening is part of it. Listening is just, I mean, there's a lot of garbage that goes into our heads every day too, you know. And but we gotta really, we gotta be aware that there's something moving. You know, I mean, I don't think there's any doubt this world is in a lot of difficulty today, these days.
There's a lot of angst in the system
and unrest. Everything's kind of shifting and unstable, and at every level. So this one professor just went by me before I left where I was standing today,
Mm-hmm.
and he talked about it as. He says it's trust-busting times. Trust-busting times.
Really?
Which is a good term. So what it means is, he says at every level, the global, the local, or in our own countries, or in terms of at the family level, or even our own, just our own trusting of our own life, our perspectives. Everything's shifting and changing. It's a really, I lived through the 60s. I was a young adult in the 60s. Lots was going on then, and it was really different. Those were the time of real significant changes, you know. But now, I think there's something more. I don't want to just be trying to say some really scary stuff, but I think that there's something a little ominous about it. Things are really ominous in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I see that.
And so I think we're really meant to see that who can we trust?
Yeah, there's so much angst, and like I'll go back to it. There's so much angst in the system.
Is there ever at every level?
Yeah.
And so that whole thing is
just it causes like just behaviors that are suboptimal behaviors.
Yeah, because we're trying to. You know, people are, what job am I going to get after this program? Am I going to be able to afford a home?
For sure.
Will I be able to afford having a family?
For sure.
What if this goes wrong and I get, there's so many things that we're bombarded with. And then I think part of that trust busting thing has to do with the leaders of our country, the people that are in control, the forces that are in control,
Yeah.
They just kind of, are they trustworthy? Can you really trust them to bring us through these times? Or are the times just too big for them to even be able to know how to handle it, you know? And I don't want to just condemn people in leadership positions.
No, of course not. Because there's people that are, very much making a strong effort to do it in a right way,
exactly.
Right? With good intention. But
I think there's a lot of corruption.
Yeah, there's a lot of corruption,
and there's a lot of people in power for the wrong reasons, you know.
Definitely.
Or being in power is a really. Here, let me talk about that briefly.
Yeah.
So I was reading one of the scripture verses recently, and it really hit me in a new way. So it was in it's in several of the New Testament books, what we call books, and it's mentioned several times where Jesus sees this young child. His disciples are arguing who's the greatest who is the greatest of us. His disciples, his followers.
Yeah.
They're arguing about who's the one that's going to really win the top marks. Okay.
Yeah.
So they got a big problem.
I see.
They got a big problem.
Yeah.
Because that's precisely totally opposite to what Jesus has been trying to teach them, right?
Yeah.
So they're concerned with their own position.
Yeah. Self-centered.
Yeah. So what did Jesus do? There's a little child there. He brings that little child up to him and brings him into the midst. into the midst of his disciples, and he says, this is the one you have to recognize. This is the one. This is how you have to be. In other words, like a little child who has no intentions or motivations for power or control or prestige.
Right.
A child is a child.
Yeah.
So I got thinking, what is that all about? And then I got thinking, well, it's a bit about who Jesus was and is. The child reflects kind of an innocence, okay?
Right. No. For sure. It is an innocence.
And that innocence, obviously a child is a child. A child doesn't know a lot.
Yeah.
But that innocence points to something. I think when the Bible talks about love, God's love, it is about something that is innocent. It doesn't have anything to do with trying to control or dominate other people. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with a willingness to put yourself at a level of a servant.
Right.
You understand? That's kind of the key. You're a servant. You're not just there to really exercise control or power over that person.
Right.
And that's what I think that's what that innocent love is really. That innocence of love is that it doesn't consider itself somebody superior. And so that's what Jesus was saying to his disciples. This child reflects something. You guys better get it right, because you're not out here to determine who's the best of you all.
Right.
Who's at the top of the heap? That he said. Then he went
So
on.
So it's like we're not out here to achieve some sort of power.
That is the key to me.
Right.
Power and dominance.
Yeah.
Because
Which I would argue a lot of people are kind of in that rat race for some sort of power, dominance, kind of this glory, whatever that may look like to them.
Well, I think part of the issue of that is that it becomes kind of a manipulative thing. You manipulate people rather than
absolutely.
And that's where we were talking about earlier when we have you have a loving family, or you're in some kind of a circumstance of love. You're not being manipulated. You're being shown stuff, and it might even be painful stuff.
Yeah.
You're being shown. But it's not being manipulated, and it's not, it's not something where you take advantage of other people because of your position. You're shown that that's totally contrary to the way we're meant to live. I think that climate of love, that circle of love that we experience sometimes is always meant to show us that you don't have to manipulate anybody. You don't have to control anybody. You just have to try to be there with that person in that moment and not try to determine things from. Yeah, obviously I hand out my writings. I want people to be convinced. I want them to recognize or at least be willing to consider the message I have.
No, for sure, and because and it's a powerful message, right? And your intention. I talk a lot. I have this big kind of one of my, I guess, pillars, I would say, is my intention. I'm constantly trying to check my intention. Is my intention in the right spot with whatever I'm doing? If it's something with ALX shoots and if I'm putting out a piece of content, is my intention good? Especially if it's me and I'm saying something in the piece of content, right?
Right.
Am I doing this selfishly, or am I doing this because I'm trying to offer some sort of value, right? So you're standing on that. You're handing out poems because you're trying to offer a piece of value. You're trying to offer value. You're trying to, deliver a message that you're hoping will resonate with people, and you're hoping that it will actually, unlock new kind of break down some sort of barrier that they might have, right? You're trying to provide value.
Well, I think it's provoke. I want to provoke people in the sense. When I say provoke, I don't mean in a nasty way, but but in the way of just to think about some stuff maybe they haven't thought about before, or if they're people that are struggling with even though they've already come to this position of faith, just try to encourage them. And listen, I think one of the biggest problems in the world has been religion. Religion has often used coercion or force to maintain its position or to extend it, but that's not the message of the New Testament. It's not about coercion. Persuasion, that's one thing, but not about coercion or power or dominance. And yeah, we can show them things, but I'll never be able to talk someone into becoming, a follower of Jesus, and you can never do that. But you might show them something that speaks to them at the moment of their lives, or that they eventually will reflect upon a little bit,
Yeah.
So I mean, I think obviously sometimes it's just more the kind of person we are than even the words we give to them, just the person we are with them. But I don't want
for sure. Actually, I'm gonna hold on to that thought because I know the camera dies out like every 25 minutes.
Oh, does it? Okay.
So I just kind of keep the audio going, but
yeah, yeah.
That was a good moment. I have a great thing I want to say. So you just mentioned it's less about the words that we say and more about the person we are, right? With that person, with whoever we're communicating with, kind of idea.
Well, I think I think we should never think that we can just give them the right words.
Right. So for sure, that's kind of what's happened with you and I, because our connection has been less of the writings that you've given me. It's been way more about the conversations we have.
Yes, exactly.
And me knowing that me just knowing that you'll be there in certain moments, and that I can go to you and I can engage in that next level kind of conversation and be able to open up to someone. That's a better way of putting it, is just being able to open up
well, it is
to someone, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
for sure.
I kind of look to you as a bit of a teacher, but also there's never really any moments really like that where you're teaching me anything, right? It's more just you're just making me aware of information, and that's
yeah, aware.
That approach is a lot is genuine. That approach, I think, is right. That just kind of making people aware of that information, whatever it may be, and then letting them do as they want with it.
Well, I mean, I don't want to take a lot of credit if any credit for that. All that I want to say
Interesting.
No, I don't. Because
I know you don't.
Because there was a time when, as a social worker, I really enjoyed connecting to people. And so even as a social worker and working in with people with issues in their lives, I mean, I kind of would enter into those experiences with people. I know I did.
And the teaching experience, right?
Yeah, you got it.
Got you.
It wasn't just me trying to fix somebody. It was
trying to
sure. But I don't want to take any credit, because I think those doors only open up as God allows them to open up.
Right.
So I put myself out there. I agree. I do that.
But you never really are a kind of teacher. Yeah, it never really is that energy.
Well, I mean, I guess sometimes I can get into some disputes with people. I have and it's not that I haven't disputes, which maybe get. Well, I know that more than me.
We all do. Yeah. Right?
I want to prove my point. And that's totally the wrong way to be.
Man, you want to hear it. So a big realization I had, honestly, it wasn't last night, it was the night before, is that I'm never going to try to prove my point to someone. It will always take away more energy than it gives you.
It's truly a really, really bad place to be.
Yeah.
And when I say really bad, what I mean is I think it's something we can fall into, but it's it's an argumentative to prove my point.
Yeah.
And you better listen to me, because I'm going to give you the final point.
Right?
You better take it in, that attitude.
Yeah. Self-centered.
Well, it is.
Right? Oh, man, it's all coming back. It all comes back.
I had two dreams some months ago with Donald Trump in it, okay? Donald Trump.
Yeah.
And we were having this conversation. I think I was trying to correct him. So I kind of was wondering what those dreams were about,
Yeah.
too. I
Yeah.
mean, it was like like you and I, face
Yeah,
to face.
yeah, yeah.
It wasn't like I was really, really giving it to him, but I think I was trying to influence him. The second time, I can't even remember the details as clearly as I'd like to. And then I realized I got into a real argumentative situation with two other individuals on different occasions, but spread apart by 7, 8, 10 months, who would say that have the same faith as I have.
Yeah.
And our argument was about Donald Trump. And they were telling me how they really supported him. And I got really annoyed. And I was going to really give them a jaw full, eh?
Yeah.
And then I got thinking, these dreams. And then I got started seeing some other things. And I thought, wow, I was really trying to hammer them into my position. And I thought, that's what Trump does.
Wow.
That's a part of me. That's
Wow.
that's something in me that can take over. If I'm not aware of it and head it off, it'll take control of me. You know what I mean? It's really, really making the other person the ultimate enemy. And rather than seeing that's an aspect I have to deal with in my own life. Now, I'm not, and so, I mean, I'm not trying to support Donald Trump and his decision making, but what I'm saying is we all have that part of ourselves that can really flare up if we're not really conscious and aware of it,
100%.
And it's a condemnation of that. How can you? I was thinking to these two guys. How can you even begin to trust or to promote or support Donald Trump? So I was being absolutely ridiculous for those two guys, Even though I think their position was wrong, I'm not meant to really put them down like that or discredit them.
Yeah.
I could try to discuss it in a way that was, kind of maybe point some things out. But that's totally different than just discrediting them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
It is.
100%. I know I got in like a little bit of an argument the other night, and like I just like I just felt drained. I just felt so drained after, and like I was on such like I've been in a really, really good kind of like positive state, ever since I became that student.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? The draining, I think it's kind of we could call it a depleting of positive energy. I suppose we could call it that.
Even it's just putting out your energy. Like the way I see it is just putting out your energy to somewhere that it doesn't need to go.
And so I see it as kind of a realization, though, a realization of how we can really miss it altogether, And that realization is, could I use the word sobering? It brings you. You know what it does, Alex?
Yeah.
I think it's what Jesus was always teaching, even that lesson, even that thing I was telling you about with the little child. He was always showing his disciples and showing us the importance of humility.
Wow.
And when we get in those states, we are anything but humble, right?
Yeah.
We are arrogant, proud people thinking we're going to really put it to this other person.
Humility actually is a great like superpower.
Well, that's what that little child is about. That little child is a humble kid.
Yeah.
And he says, in fact, Jesus on another occasion said, you must humble yourself and be like this little child.
Yeah,
humble yourself.
For sure.
So we see children and we think, oh, boy, we can really teach these children something.
Yeah.
But they have something to teach us a lot more often.
Yeah, they do, right? They do. That's amazing.
It
Yeah,
is,
I find like I actually am like really, I can get myself in a really, really happy kind of state if I'm just like, if I do have humility. And it's like it's just like, where a lot of my anxiety comes from? It just comes from making mistakes. And I've never really said this, but like a lot of my anxiety does kind of root from just like social interactions. I'm great socially, like great sometimes.
I like that sometimes. Yeah.
That's
That's right.
That's the.
Sometimes it's kind of like you really are. I think again, it's like we get gifted sometimes to really get it right, eh?
Right.
We're
Right.
gifted. It's like a gift you get, and it comes upon you. Other times we're kind of. Listen, there's lots of times out there, or even with people in general. I mean, I think I'm in a fog. My brain's in a fog. I can't seem to articulate anything decent.
Yeah. I think it's just it comes back down to that self-centeredness. When I'm self-centered, I'm terrible socially, and I'll regret those moments when I walk away.
We're meant to. Because
know?
that regret is not necessarily just a something to crush us, but it's meant to bring us to an awareness, So regretting or recognizing those things isn't just meant to be a despairing moment,
For sure.
But some people can get caught in that
They're
despair
totally,
too.
yeah, I could see that. They're totally there for you just to learn and grow from and become just to build that voice inside your head into something more and more positive each time, right?
Yeah, and to humble us and to realize that we aren't as great as we would like to often think we are.
Make you realize you're a little goofy sometimes. We're all a little goofy sometimes.
I did something last week. I mean, I had to get some repairs done I had to have my snow tires put on a couple of weeks ago, and then for some reason, I don't know. I bought some things I didn't need to get for the wheels. And later I thought. That was totally unnecessary to buy those things. There was no reason for me. So I really lamented about it. It was just a waste of money. And not that I cherish money so much, but it was a waste that I could have used for some people I meet along the way. And it was totally based on just an appearance that I didn't even really care about, to come think about it.
Yeah.
So keeping appearances and getting caught up with the whole world of fashion and glamour and having to have the right looks.
Yeah.
Man, that's another big superficial aspect of modern living.
We're self-conscious.
Yeah.
We're self-conscious out here, and we're trying to put makeup over it.
So identity is what our lives are. What is our identity?
Yeah, talk about identity.
How?
What I'll tell you what. My identity is how I think about myself when I'm alone.
That's where it has to be.
Interesting.
That's really where it has to be. It has to be at that time.
Do you think some people will get wrapped up into their identity being how other people are perceiving them?
Oh, unquestionably.
Interesting.
I mean, I think that's probably a major thing amongst many of us. We want a great when Jesus confronted the religious people of his time, it was about them maintaining their appearances of superiority or of their authority, but they always had, and this maybe is a little different over your spot, but they always were doing that on the basis of putting other people down and looking down on other people. But the same thing when we're trying to please other people with our appearances. That's really we're meant to have other people respect us for the person we are, not for our appearances. And so much of our modern life, and it's been throughout history anyway, not just. But
I really got tied up in that with ALX shoots. I really did.
Well, we do.
It's just, and it was to such a bigger degree too, because like I was putting it out. I was putting my appearance out a little bit, and it was just like where all my thoughts were just like really like gravitating towards this certain area, right?
It's called an image.
Yeah.
There's a difference between image and identity, right?
For sure.
Image and identity are two different things.
Yeah.
Like even in terms of, say, some of the work that you've been doing with some of the some of these singers and that and
the rappers.
It's about image.
It's all about image.
And the image gets into all kinds of really perverse stuff, right?
Yeah.
Mostly it does.
Yeah.
And I think it's such a... So what is image about for a lot of us? Well, image is about appealing to people in a certain way that they will really think, whoa, this person's really got it.
Right.
And it's usually...
How toxic is that?
And it's usually about sexuality, not always. It's usually about that.
Yeah?
I would think a lot of times it is.
Okay.
About proving our attractiveness, right? Our attractiveness.
Okay.
And I think that can happen it does happen at every level, at every age. So I think it has to do with that to some extent. Not only that, but definitely it's an image thing, and an image thing is it's kind of a superficial thing. It's keeping up appearances, and sometimes when we do that, we never let the other person really know where we're at, because we can't afford to let them know that we're vulnerable, and that we are hurting people.
Vulnerability.
And hurting, and we're not really what people would think we are.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that there's more to us than that. And I mean, truly, it's not just meant to be at the horizontal level, but it's also at the vertical level. Can we let that God know how much we really need Him, not to improve our image, but to have an identity that's really based on humility and love, and not controlling or dominating people. But our identity is based on what He has shown us and what He reveals to us and what Christ did for us, and it's that giving, sacrificial love. And I mean, that's a day by day again thing. You got to work it out every day, every situation we're in, Alex. I don't think there's a day that we can just automatically say, well, I'm going to go out there and do that today. Well, there we're getting into the pride thing right away, right? Right?
Right.
Oh, I'm going to just be that same person today as I was yesterday. I'm just going to really, really prove this thing. But no, it's not about us proving our identity, even our image, even especially not our image.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about hyping up a certain moment.
Yes, that's the times we're living in. Hyping up. Everything is hyped.
Yeah.
You watch anything, the sports events.
Everything's
I try to stay away from it totally, but they're so hyped.
Yeah.
They got the sports commentators are more important than the players almost. You know what I mean? Everything's got to be hyped.
Yeah.
This is the best game ever. This is the greatest play ever. But so many events are like that. People, even the whole celebration of Christmas, everything gets hyped. And I think that is definitely part of the times we're living in, Alex.
Yeah.
More so than ever. And the media does. I mean, let's face it. That's what the media does. So much of the media is about that.
And you get tied up into like this, thinking that this one accomplishment is gonna bring a next kind of level of joy to you, right? You kind of hype up, for me, my relationship to this, and what I brought forward to you that one day on the corner was, I was like, I was working so hard towards this like one thing, right?
Yep.
Putting all my energy into this one thing.
Precisely.
And then when it was over, I was just like, I was hoping for some sort of feeling, like some sort of something, right? And I didn't get anything, and I was just kind of left, a little
empty.
A little beat up, a little empty's a good word. Empty's a good word.
I think it is, because
just
I think
empty,
that's what
just empty.
Yeah, because when we have false expectations like that, and we kind of have this thing that we just think is going to be it just doesn't. It can't be. It's just maybe something good happened and we can acknowledge it. But when we hype it up into something beyond what it's supposed to be, it's almost certain to elicit a letdown, or you're going to have to go and quickly find the next high that brings you up. You know what I mean? Which I think is what a lot of people do. They're not.
Yeah.
They're afraid to deal with the emptiness of their lives.
Yeah.
That they really don't have any depth to them. And I mean, I know I'm not trying to put anyone down.
No, for sure.
And
for sure.
people,
I think that's an interesting conversation, though. I think it goes back to kind of that distraction conversation, instead to fill that emptiness. We're turning to video games, we're turning to smoking weed, we're turning to just avoiding the real problem.
We are. I think that's really the key. I mean, that's one of the keys. That's one of the definite keys to it all. I mean, and again, it's a day by day struggle, man. Not to get caught up in that hyper expectations because I think what happens is those hyperness, those hyper qualities that we try to keep going on, it eventually just leaves us emptier and emptier, and then we got to go a little further, and we got to go a little further, and those needs are never met.
Yeah.
In terms of just our own feelings and our own emotionality, and those things can never be satisfying.
How I've described this to my one bro a while ago, and we related to it on such a high level, and it's this conversation is reminding me of it. It was like, once you've achieved something up here, and then you achieve something up here, when you're achieving anything below that, it's like you're setting a new expectation. You set a new expectation for yourself of like, I will only be happy when.
That's right.
You know, and if you and then you can get caught in the rat race of like, all right, I gotta do this and that in order to accomplish that, and then I'll be happy.
It is a rat race.
You know.
So, can I give you the Christian perspective on that?
Yeah.
It's that we are only, and that's why I think it's kind of why I said to you before, I don't want to take any credit for those opportunities that open up, because they are a gift. Now, if I recognize that the things that are really neat in my life and really exceptional are a gift, rather than something I'm just grasping to get in that next high moment.
Yeah.
It's recognizing that God is the only one who really truly deserves that kind of, he deserves my willingness to give him the credit for anything, not my own. And when I'm giving him credit, the Bible calls it giving glory to God, really acknowledging him, then I'm kind of really putting myself in the right place, because then I know that, hey, and I don't want to just feel self-satisfied with a conversation I had with someone, or I want to really recognize and giving thanks.
Right.
Isn't giving thanks such a vital thing?
Yeah.
If we stop giving, I think I told you about a student I meet, and she gives thanks. She says she gives thanks every night, but she doesn't know who she's giving thanks to. She gives thanks anyway.
That's incredible. That's incredible.
But even just recognizing that I think giving thanks is a really humbling thing, man. Thank you, God, for bringing this person along. Thank you for that opportunity to share. Thank you for the things you were showing me about myself, as much as maybe I needed it more than the other person did in that conversation. It's always a recognition that we're never to take anything for granted, nor be just trying to achieve our own self-satisfaction in these things that we're pursuing. No, it's not about us. That's a hard thing to live. It's a hard thing to accept. It's not about us and my fame and glory and the adulation I'm going to get. But that's what people are so hyped on all that.
Hyped on it.
Yeah, and it's hard not to be, because it kind of pleases. It's pleasing up to a certain extent, but I mean, very temporarily. And then, like you said, you got to go reaching for the next one. The next high. Yeah. Or the next big achievement.
Yeah.
Let's face
it. Getting hyped on your achievements is still a good thing, right? Getting excited over accomplishments is still something I would encourage.
I think you can appreciate them, but I think I think you can be thankful. But just think of these people who are in the limelight all the time, and they're always getting this adulation from the crowd, from the people that are cheering out there. It kind of feeds into ego, to say the least, right? Yeah. It feeds into a sense that, oh, wow, I'm pretty great. Yeah. I think, and I don't want to use Donald Trump as the ultimate example, but, he gets off on the adulation he gets. He gets off on that. It's kind of really, it's what keeps him pumped up and keeps going. If all of a sudden people start saying to him, hey, listen, bud, you're not so good. You're not these things you're saying shouldn't be said by somebody. I mean, if you lose that audience, if someone takes over number one on the hit parade, or on the top singing the crowd group, well, woo. So there's always a sense of the possibility of you tumbling down and not being up there again. And I mean, I know that I don't have to be caught in that trap. If I see it's what it is.
It's a choice.
I'm just glad for the one-on-ones I get with some people, and maybe that I have an opportunity. I want to be thankful for those things, and I don't want to be caught up in, oh wow, I wish more people would like me, or all those kind of things. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You want to be. That's part of, I guess, the whole thing we're talking about, is being liked by others.
Yeah.
Being,
attaching your identity to others,
and that's kind of what
the perception by others.
They say that's one of the big problems with Facebook, because everybody's getting these likes, right? or they are, and if they don't,
It's even more disgusting with Instagram and TikTok.
is it? Yeah, well,
it's
that,
even
all
more
that stuff,
disgusting,
yeah.
man.
So people they want to be acknowledged, liked, all those things are. I mean, it's kind of human, but I think we're trying to get it on a very superficial level in that way.
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So a couple weeks ago, at the beginning of July of November, so I was driving north to visit my family up in Owen Sound, and I was coming out of this. The clouds were really heavy and really kind of had this brooding quality, scowling quality to them. And I get up to this town, Durham, and all of a sudden I noticed they've had a pretty good snowfall. There was hardly any snow. There was a bit of snow between between there and Durham, here and in Durham. But all of a sudden, the sun came out, and I'm driving through town, and I got up to the top of the town and heading further north, and there's quite some really neat hills and real vistas, you can really see out. And the sun just came out in this tremendous burst of sunlight, and it was and all the snow on the ground and on the trees. And it was like a transformation. I came out of this kind of overcast grayness into this bright light. And not bright, just bright light, but just this beauty. It was a beauty. It was a transformation. And I think that God is wanting to do that in our lives. He wants us to have that kind of a transformation, a totally new experience and outlook. I mean, I think I've talked about transformation, right? And that doesn't mean it's always going to be easy, or that we can even just accomplish it. We can do this and it's going to work. But it shows us, I think, what our Creator is after. He wants us to be transformed, even in terms of many of the things we've been talking about tonight. Mm-hmm. A transformation of our outlook on life, and are getting away from this egotistical kind of a mindset, and just showing that kind of pure love, that innocent love that those young children show us, and really getting out of this whole domination, control, manipulating people, and just using them for our own purposes. So it is a transformation, and I really think if someone gets a sense of that, man, I'm telling you, they'll know that even if there might be some difficult times in between, you don't want anything less than really recognizing that, You get out of your own sense of your self-importance. Because a child has no sense of their self-importance,
Yeah.
They have no sense of that. That young child, it was such a great example, Gies, and he used it on a few occasions. One time it says he took them in his arms. Well, we're meant to value that reality. And our own self-importance, man, gets us in, it's an ego thing, gets us in a lot of trouble. It may not, if you're thinking that's the way we're supposed to live. You might think, well, that's how it's supposed to be. I'm really supposed to be a self-important person. But it will eventually, it'll be our downfall. And it'll be the world's downfall if we think we're building a super civilization that can outlast anything.
No, I agree. Like, I think I mean, I mentioned this to you briefly, but like, I was kind of going down, a path that like I didn't want to be going down, and then I just kind of had to. I'm so thankful I, realized it and checked myself and addressed it early, and I think there was a lot of signs. There were a lot of signs that kind of came to me naturally. That was like
there were that whole realization you had about being a student. That was the first step. But again, it was a recognition.
That was crazy.
Right?
That was crazy.
And that meant you didn't have to try to pursue something that was, it looked like it had a lot of energy and a lot of great things about it.
Yeah.
But it wasn't as, in fact, it was probably leading into a
it wasn't as good as I thought it would be.
No, because you saw the dark side to it, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I think it was just last evening you said you were reflecting on that, right?
It was literally last night.
Which shows me, again, the timing of you and I sitting down and talking tonight.
Mm-hmm.
It's
incredible.
It is. The timing.
Incredible.
You had that experience last night.
Yeah.
And I think there are. Some of
I've
them,
had a lot. Pretty much every time I have an experience that's along this sort of level, you know, this I experience really within myself and super deep. There's usually like a moment shortly after where I'm talking to you about it.
yeah, well, it has happened quite regularly.
Yeah.
And so sometimes I put a check on something. You know, I was from my perspective, I was concerned maybe about some of the direction you were going in with the videography, some of
Yeah.
it. And I didn't want to
That's
really.
super cool. That's super cool that you were able to recognize that.
No, I did. Well, I think at one point I said remember we talked one time about, are you doing this to serve others or just to serve yourself? I think we talked about that on one
Yeah,
occasion.
and I was super open about the fact that like it's been kind of selfish.
Yeah, I think you
Right.
were, and I think that's what you're continuing to get. Again, I think that's what when you have really good conversations with someone you care about, it triggers those recognitions or realizations, right?
100%.
But it's
100%.
an ongoing.
Hearing it out loud has helped me so much.
But it's a continuing process. Don't think we ever get out of
For
it.
sure.
Having
There's
to
no
need it.
finale.
Yeah.
There's like I said, like we were talking about. There's no moment that like it's all. Just
I got it all together now,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
then we're right back in the same trap, right?
Right.
I've
right.
got it together.
Yeah. Wow, that's so
I know.
crazy. Yeah.
It's a great thing, man. I'm telling you, we have had. I mean, listen, I don't want people out there or whoever's going to listen to this to think that it's just about you and I. But I mean, we've had.
I think this is gonna serve a lot of people. I know it will.
Our experience of connecting has to do with everything that this whole podcast is about.
Yeah.
I mean, it couldn't have happened in a more amazing way.
Yeah.
You were gradually getting these recognitions, and then it just helped me to really even crystallize more completely some of what I wanted to share about tonight.
Mm-hmm.
Sharing.
Yeah.
Sharing. It's sharing, not just talking at people, but sharing. Hopefully in ways that other people will check their own, their own sense of where they're at.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I love it. Tell the story of the kids that heard the bells start ringing, and I'll just let you tell the story, because I thought the story was just like literally when you told me this story, which was yesterday, by the way. I had a realization in that moment while I was looking at you. It's just incredible. It's just incredible.
Well, we should never lose sight of, again, I'll get back to the young children, how much wonder they can bring to our lives, and there can be some pain involved too. But what I mean, so there's this a couple women and a couple young children, and they're coming across the railway tracks, by the light rail tracks over by E5, and all of a sudden the two girls, they were about 10, 9. They started singing Jingle Bells, but in I don't know if it was Mandarin or Cantonese. I'm not sure, but they were singing in either Mandarin or Cantonese. So but I could tell by the tune what they were singing. Okay, and they were kind of jumping and laughing, and they were having a great time singing this as they cried. They were obviously in a moment of pure joy.
Yeah.
So they come past me, and as they come past me, they're not singing it anymore, and I started singing Jingle Bells in English.
I love that.
So first they looked at me, they were kind of startled.
It was like this old, but like,
I know.
It's like the old dude on the corner, and it's like you're like a little Chinese girl, walking, singing Jingle Bells in a different language, and then you go around this corner, and then all of a sudden you look up, and there's this figure.
I know. I'm kind of looming above the big white beard,
Yeah.
And all of a sudden,
I love that.
when they got startled, then they both laughed. They both thought, wow. They both were really, really, they experienced a second moment of joy.
Yeah.
It kind of, it startled them to begin with, but then they got into it, and I thought, wow, was that ever neat?
Yeah, I love that.
Well, I think that's young kids and the wonder that's available. I mean, I think it's a gift, and I could never have made that happen. It had to be just that moment. They were singing that song. Mm-hmm. I think they were singing it because the railway, signals, it was the sound was kind of was going, and that probably reminded them of Jingle Bells. I don't know, the sound of the warning there at the railway tracks, and maybe that's why they started singing it, man. But it sure allowed me to get into their moment.
Yeah.
Wasn't that? I mean, it was so neat.
I love it.
I know.
love it.
I wish someone else would have been there to see it. Well, the two parents saw it, but it was really something cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
But listen, there's 1,001 moments waiting for us out there if we can. I met this young girl downtown Kitchener one day with her mom, and she was so engaging. She was about 3 or 4, so engaging. And then she went by me, and she looked back and was smiling and waving. And then they came back, and she was still that way. So I asked her mother, "Well, what's her name?" And her mother said, "Harmony." Harmony. So I had a harmonious moment with that little girl. She was 3 or 4. She was so exquisite, man. I mean, she just had this spontaneous sense of engaging as a 3. She never met me before. There I am looming above her, and there are some children that are like that, man. They just are so engaging, even at a young age. They can't hold it in. They're lessons in life, I think. They're lessons to have those experiences.
Yeah. I love it. Is there anything else? You
I'd
really
like to
wanna
leave
bring
it.
up?
Yeah, no, I think that's.
I think that was
life.
incredible.
You and I, you're in Kinesia. I've said this to you a few times. Life is kinetic. There's always something going.
I was actually I was about to mention that still the kinematic movement of the world.
I'm telling you, and it is. It's dynamic, but it can be the world. Some of the stuff we've been talking about that the world push. It can get into a frenetic or frantic kind of energy where everything just has, like we were talking about being hyped up. That's one. But then there's that other kinetic activity where things really happen. There's a movement. Something really meaningful occurs. And again, it's not like we're always living at that same level, but I think those moments, that movement, that whether it's in having a really wonderful conversation or with someone, or just seeing the vitality, what's going on in nature around us, the changing skies, the birds. Some days, man, it just about overwhelms me when I see it. When there's so much going on in nature. It hits me. The sun comes out, it moves behind the clouds. Everything is kind of happening. It's a really, sometimes you get such a an increasing awareness of it. You really realize, man, this creation is really amazing. It's kind of speaking to us. I don't think I think it is speaking to us. Sometimes very subtly, sometimes it just is meant to really bring us into a recognition that this creation here is pretty amazing. Let's not take it for granted either, And the relationships we get, other people we get a chance to relate to, it's the same thing, Let's not take them for granted, right? Maybe that's another point, eh? Let's not take anything for granted. Let's not get to the point where we get
gratitude.
Yeah.
Lead with gratitude.
That's right. Taking something for granted, man, which is what I did in my marriage years ago, is one of the worst things we can do, I think. And entitlement, we get into that state of emptiness again, or before long, that's where we'll be. But having a real recognition of things that are there for us, gifts that we've been given, that's where we get what's on this cup in front of me, joy. Joy. Yeah. I think that's probably as far as we can go.
That's amazing.
Well, we can always go further.
We could always go further.
Always.
We could always go further.
We'll be talking here till this time tomorrow night.
We'll definitely have to, do another one, sometime. I really appreciate you, you and your time, you and your friendship, everything we've built between each other and you shared. I appreciate you sharing everything you shared, to the camera, to the people that are going to be able to watch this and hear it,
Well, I think it was building up, and I was writing down these things.
This is super special right now.
It was really building up to something tonight, and just to really try to convey a sense of what life is about, And I don't mean that in some kind of pretentious way. That there is a meaning to it all. We're not just living in this, like one philosopher said, back in the 20th century, he says, his point was, why is there something instead of nothing? In other words, why is there this existence? And why is there this and not just nothing? How is it? And other people have pointed out that we're living in a realm on the earth here, and in our relationships. We're living in a realm that is meant to be. Even the kind of consciousness that we have as humans, that can appreciate the creation, can appreciate relationships, can appreciate the need for transformation, all these things that we can share at a human level. I mean, how do you really explain all that? You know?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Did it just happen by chance? Well, how could that be? Is it just something meaningless that we're going to just live a few years here and then pass out? Or is there something larger going on? Is there something much larger going on? And I think human consciousness, and the whole thing of being able to share that these things with other people really show us that there's something really vital in it all. And I think it goes beyond just our human existence here on the planet. It just doesn't end in some final, that's it, bye-bye. It's something much more awaiting us. That's how I see it anyway.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible. It's incredible.
It is incredible life. Yep.
Just yeah, the way you can even attempt to put it into words, I think is super inspirational.
Well, we get an opportunity, Alex. We get an opportunity, and it kind of gets back to I want to be in that kind of that mindset, that consciousness that doesn't just treat it as something inconsequential or meaningless or
Definitely.
just. I want it to. I think it's shown me time. Been shown time and time again. It's not inconsequential to be able to have that ability to share about life on a level that I think we are meant to share it on. We're meant to.
Mm-hmm.
That is a meaning. That's something I'm quite convinced is a very revealing thing. So may we continue to have that opportunity, whether with one another or with others along the way.
Mm-hmm.
And if we can keep that focus off our own self-centeredness and on the other, I think we'll continually find opportunity. We'll continually have those kind of experiences. That's what I mean.
Yeah.
And get off our own little egotistical sort of notions and ideas and goals, and really recognize the wonder of little children and what they're meant to tell us. All right.
I love it. Thank you, bro. Thank you, man. I love you. I love you. I love what we've built, man.
Yeah,
thank you for coming on and sharing. Yeah.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.